So, fluency. What we did with the syllable pack, so this idea of really getting them quick on closed syllables, open syllables, silent E, consonant LE, if they get to where they can do that really, really fast, then they'll be well on their way to some good fluency. The other thing you can do that the kids love, and I don't know why this is, but they just love it, is off the Florida Center for Reading Research. You can get all kinds of practice sheets. So like this is a bunch of closed syllables, right? And they should be able to do this in a minute. So the nice thing is they've kind of laid it out and they know about what a minute should be. So you can time them on this. And I really don't care, there aren't norms per se for this, but you're trying to get it. You do it. You just show them the first time. You time me, and then you read it. Not super fast, but it's kind of at a good regular click, and see how far you get, and you put it down there. Then they're going to read it, and they're going to keep a record of it. They have this on that site. So whatever their first try was on that sheet, and then they graph it. And for whatever reason, kids like this, no matter the age, they love graphing this, and they like to see their change, and they'll compete with each other, and they'll compete with themselves, and they just enjoy it. So for whatever reason, this is a big popular one. So you get the closed syllable types down, and then you could do some open syllable types. And then if you want to, you could do your own list mixing the two. Okay. So there's nothing magical about this, and the way I always do it to norm it is I read it in a good clip, and that's the score they're trying to get to. Okay. Right? That's easy enough. Yeah. Here's some R control, and this is really tricky because I want them to do. I don't particularly like this one, to be real honest with you. If I'm going to do this one, I'm just going to do the ER, IR, UR as and then I'm going to make them say this as or and R. The only problem with that is then they're going to see this at the end of words like dollar, bless you, color, and they're going to say cull or they're going to say doll R. It's probably not a big deal, so you just have to kind of show it to them, whatever. So this is still pretty helpful because they'll have to really think on this one, and so you doing it first helps. Or, R, or, art, R, and they have to go back and forth. So they're having to really remember that AR is two sounds, R, but you just have to learn to, when you see it, know it right away. And or is two sounds, or, but when you see it, you just have to know it right away. And I tell them the only time that that's going to change is on words like this. So you put dollar and color up there. But do you think that if you read this as collar, you'd know what it is? And they'd say yes, So I don't worry too much about it. This is a good one for practicing that, but I don't like it right away. They have to get a little experience before they can, just so you have to choose your. So here's a silent E. Okay. And then later on, you can mix the silent E with the closed syllable, and that gets pretty tricky, right? Yeah. And then here's some vowel teams. And here's those consonant LEs. And what it does too is they start seeing things in these kinds of chunks. So it not only improves their fluency, but they start sort of looking at things in this way. And then here's one that they've mixed for you. So there's closed syllables, there's silent E, there's R controlled. This is a pretty tricky one. Yep, but it's a nice one. It's a very advanced. And then you can also do phrases. And these are kind of nice, just depending on your kids. And so I'm going to scan all of these sheets in to the D2L site, just because then you won't have to download them. You can just pull them off. But just be really careful. So you have to constrain this. You have to just use what you're working on. So when you're in reading reflex and you're doing the word building, all the way up to magic E, then you're just going to use the closed syllable types, just that.
So this
Get
is an
them really good at
extension
that.
of
It's an
everything.
extension. Yeah, it's a way to work on fluency because it helps them see and recognize words so quickly that you're getting to that, you know, instant recognition. So we're getting their brain trained to just see it, know it. Yeah. So.
And are those, the phrases, are those about a minute as well?
Yeah, I don't worry
Give or
about
take.
that.
Okay.
You know what? I say we're working for how many I can do in a minute, and you're trying to beat my time in a minute. So if my time is, and I that way I can say it that I'm, you know, and you say, now watch how I'm calm. I'm trying to read this as quickly as I can, but I have to get everyone right because if they get one wrong, it counts against them.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm trying to read this as quickly as I can, but if I get one wrong, that counts against me. So I'm taking really being very attentive and just reading the speed I have to read to get it right. And I do a minute, and then that's what they're trying to beat because, you know, you're both good readers, and that's a perfectly acceptable. And they love that because now it's you. And I don't go so super speedy that older kids can't beat me.
Okay.
I'll be like, man, got to start reading more to get my fluency up. The other thing that you can do with fluency is really simple, and then you can compare. This is a good for progress monitoring anytime. And we talked about it before, but they're reading in their book by themselves independently, and you say, hey, let's take a timed reading. And so they've got the same kind of sheet you used here to graph their progress. You just say, where are you at right now on this page? And they say, well, I'm right here. And I'll say, well, then let's back up to here. And you just read, and I'm going to time a minute. We'll see how far you get. And then they get to count the words and see how far they went. And I do this twice. So I tell them, okay, first time, then we'll take the score, and I'll make a mark if you miss any words. So make sure you're doing your best reading. And so we count the words, take off their errors. They get a score. I say, now we're going to do it again. Start at the exact same place. And then they see if they can get like 2 more or 3 more. So for these on the graph, what we record is what their improvement was from the first read to the second read. Oh, you improved by 2 words. Nice. So we'll graph that. And so this is going to vary, but at a certain point, they'll get to where they can improve by like 5, 6 on a second read. You know, and that starts to kind of show some progress too. Nice thing for you is you can count the words and then just apply it to the norm chart that you have in your assessment, and now you've got a progress monitoring probe that you've gotten for this child. And you can, all of them can do it in a whole classroom because everybody can do this. Okay, stop reading. You're all reading independently. Stop reading. Okay, mark where you are. Go back to the sentence, the sentence where you are in your book. Started at the beginning of a sentence. And when I say stop, put a light pencil mark in your book, okay? And then count the words. And that one is not as good because you're not taking off they don't know if they've made an error. If you're doing this in a whole group, they don't know that they've made an error. And yet, it's probably pretty close to about what they've got. So you tell them, do your best reading, try not to make any errors, read as quickly as you can, and then they count, and you've got some, you know,
idea.
A whole group, you've got some idea how your class is doing. And then you can say, let's do it again. And what's cool about that is now then they see how much further they got. And so everybody in class is going, oh, I got 5 more words, I got 6 more words. And it's kind of cool because they're in the level of reading that's right for them. So even somebody who's struggling, maybe they're a 2nd grade reading with somebody who's 7th grade reading, but they're just adding words at their level. So it gives kind of a leveled playing field. But it's really nice for you because it's a quick way to take a probe and not have much trouble doing it. Okay? All right, so that's pretty much everything about fluency. But while we're here, I'm going to try to do some reading with error corrections. And for some reason, I didn't bring my pencil, and I don't want to mark in this. I've got pencils. Could I borrow a pencil from you? Thank you. Thought I put it in my bag, and I'm not seeing it. So now let's see if we can make this work so that the person here can sort of see what we're reading. Not perfectly, but a little bit. Now, in this, I tell them,
Do you need
okay, thank
paper?
you. Nope, that's it. I say, now we're going to read here, and the only thing that I'll need is my whiteboard, possibly. And I'll say, now, it is the dreaded pencil reading. So now you are going to read for me and try to read like maybe one of your students would read for me. We're going to really try to do this.
Okay.
And make the mistakes that you think your student would make. And I'll say, this is why I don't do this with you the whole 20 minutes. But right now you're going to read aloud to me, and I am going to be correcting every mistake. You cannot even miss a little word like the or of. And if you do, I'm going to point to it, and you have to correct it, okay? And if you can't correct it, that's okay. We'll work on the whiteboard and figure it out, okay?
Okay.
All right, so go ahead and read.
By the end of second grade, Adam knew it was hopeless. Walter could read a 200-page chapter book. Adam couldn't read the directions at the top of a math paper. When he looked at the signs posted all over the room, he felt like he was on the planet Neptune. During reading group, he watched a fly bumping against the window. He bothered other kids. He kicked the wall. Most of the time, Adam sat at his desk and pretended.
Okay, so let's say probably a kid reading this would probably struggle with
Neptune.
Neptune, probably hopeless, possibly. 100, yep. What's another one that, signs might be one.
Bothered, maybe?
Bothered, where's that one at?
Right there.
Okay, all right, so when you come to those, do something weird, Carrie, all right?
Okay.
Right.
By the end of second grade, Adam knew it was hopeless.
Okay, you said, and now I'm going to correct that error, and what I'm going to do is tell her what she said. You said hope S. You got hope, and you said S, but you left something out. What's this sound?
Oh.
Yeah, do you recognize this piece? Like you could almost see this piece of the word. What would that be if it were by itself?
Less.
Good. So what's this word by itself?
Hope.
And this is?
Less.
So together it was?
Hopeless.
Now, in doing that entire correction, you've lost whatever it was we were talking about here. And I'm not going to make you go back and figure that out. I'm just going to read and get the meaning again. So I'm going to say, so by the end of second grade, Adam knew it was hopeless.
Walter could read a 200.
Okay, so you said hundred, and this can be ooh. What else could it be? If it were just in a little word like this, what would you say?
Hun.
Okay, so let's do that as hun.
100.
Okay, so Walter could read a
200-page chapter book. Adam couldn't read the directions at the top of a math paper. When he looked at the things posted.
Okay, now let's go back to this one.
Okay.
You said when he looked at the things posted. Does that make sense? I am going to point out to them that the whole thing should make sense, right? Okay, when he looked at the things posted, that just doesn't make sense to me. Okay, you said sings. What did you do there?
Switch the N and the G.
Yeah, you did. So I'm going to tell you something pretty interesting. These two letters can work together. Let's just put this on my whiteboard because this is kind of wild. So what you said was sing, right? And that's perfectly right. There's that ing, sing. But that's not what we have. We have, and I will just tell you, this is a sound picture for just a single sound. And the sound is n. Okay. So it looks like this is going to be in, sin, if this is n, but it's not. For some reason that I can't quite explain to you, In this word, even though this can be I, and it should be I in a closed syllable like this time it's I. So you have to remember that this is N, and you have to remember that this is I. So what's this going to be?
Sign.
Sign. Okay, and then there's an S on the end of this one, meaning that there's more than one, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we have signs,
Signs.
right? All right, so if this word is signs, it's a very interesting. I just want to show you something because you may come to a word like this, and you're going to want to say that this is signal, and you should be right about that. But in this particular word, they break it right here and they say signal. So this can be N, it might be separated and showing two sounds. I'm trying to think now of some other words that have that N sign in it. I mean that N, there's, actually, this is an animal that uses that. And it's an open syllable, so this is going to be you, and you know this is N, so it's new. New. There is an animal called a new that has that in there. And I might even pull out, if I can think of another one to put there.
Mm-hmm.
So let's just read that sentence again, and I want you to read the sentence again because I want you to come to that word and see if you can say it.
When he looked at the signs posted all over the room, he felt like he was going to the planet.
Now you said he was
Oh.
going. So let's try it again.
Okay.
When he looked at the signs posted all over the room, he felt like
He was on the planet Neptune.
right. So you said Neptune as if there were no E right there. Remember what Sneaky E does? He reaches over here and makes him say his name. Ooh, you. Sometimes he says you and sometimes ooh, but let's just say it's you. So Neptune. And then, okay. So you get how we do that.
Yeah.
Just then I did too much of the work for you.
Mhm.
So this is the good thing that Reading Recovery does is
Mhm.
I'm going to make you do all of that work.
Mhm.
So if this is Sneaky E is making you say his name, you got this part right. What was it again? And you'll say
Yeah.
no. So let's try this one. It's going to be
Ooh.
just know
Or
the
you,
kids are
yeah.
likely to say
Neptune.
tune, and then I'll say put it all together, and you'll say
Neptune.
Neptune, and I'll say, what does that sound like a word? You know, have you ever heard of a planet called Neptune? You know, it can be you, or sometimes it's just ooh. This time it's ooh. Neptune. They often, you don't even have to go into that because they'll say Neptune, and I'll say, okay, so what's the word then? And they'll just zip to it. So, and now I'm going to go back and pick up the meaning because we've spent a long time on Neptune. So, when he looked at the signs posted all over the room, he felt like he was on the planet Neptune, and now you pick up from there.
Okay.
So you can see how they need to be in text that is really close to their reading because you don't want to be doing this more than about 3, maybe 4 times on a page, right? Otherwise, it's just too frustrating. Now, that said, sometimes a kid will want to read a book so badly that we are doing error corrections, you know, like 3 in every line. And I'll say, you know what? I know how much you want to read this book, and I like that you want to read this book, so let's do it this way. I'll read a sentence, you read a sentence. I'll read a sentence, you read a sentence. Maybe I'll read 3 sentences and you read a sentence, just so that we can keep some meaning going and also do the error corrections since it's so important to the student to read this book. But hopefully the student's reading the whole book and you're not having more than 1, maybe 2 errors on this page, right? Okay, that's error corrections. That, honestly, is where you get the big bang for your buck in interventions. This is so important. I just can't stress enough. When Reading Recovery works, it's because of this.
Okay.
When anything doesn't work, I say, how often did you read with the kids? Like, they can tell me that they did a fabulous intervention with all of the pieces, right?
Mhm.
And I'll say, so how much reading with error corrections did you do? Well, we didn't do that. They just did independent reading. Or I read to them, or we did choral reading, or whatever they say. And I say, this is where the rubber hits the road. It's miles on the page, and you've got to get them accurate. So, and then when we finish this page, we'll stop and talk, and I'll say, gosh, we did so much error correction there. Do you want me just to read it to you again so we can talk about what's going on here? Maybe so, right? Maybe not. I'm hoping that we're not having to do so much error correction that it is impacting meaning, because it's miles on the page. Vocabulary changes with miles on the page. Syntax understanding changes with miles on the page. Semantic understanding changes. Understanding of morphemes, understanding of the code, ability to be aware of phonemes, all of that improves the more reading they do. So while you're reading this one-on-one very intensively with this student, your other students are over there doing some independent reading, but you're sure, and you've talked to them because they're older students about you've got to be reading something that's easy for you, because you don't want your brain to be encountering that many words that are new or hard for you. If you do, you may go down the wrong path. You'll be able to read more difficult material as you've read more. You're going to slowly increase your ability to read harder and harder books. But if you confuse your brain by reading something that's too hard for you, where you don't understand the patterns that I'm trying to teach you, when we're not reading, then your brain gets very confused and it quits making the connections we need. So you've got to help your brain by reading a book that's at the right level. Not too hard, not too easy. And then you'll know, because when you're working with them, you get to say, golly, look at how many we had to correct here. Do you just love this book this much? I mean, could you find something about this topic that's a little bit easier for you? Or if it's so easy, it's like, wait a minute, I didn't have to correct you on a single word. This is way too easy for you. Oh, but I love this book. It's like, okay, but try to find something that's a little more difficult for you on the same topic. Yeah, maybe finish this one if it's not too long. But let's get a better book. Because I'm not helping you at all here if you know all the words. So that's reading with error corrections, and that's the big, big thing that we need to do. So let me stop that. And